Belgrade in March 2011. 20 years ago, Yugoslavia sank into civil war. While Slovenia, Croatia, and Bosnia have since achieved acceptance in Europe, Serbia was long considered the country of the aggressors, a hopeless case. How do Serbian writers reflect their own history? Our reporter Matthias Frickel set off on a literary search together with writer Vladimir Pištalo.
Tadum, tadum, tadum.
Radio Belgrade 1 transmitted the heartbeat of Yugoslavia's Marshal Tito. When it stopped, Bain said, "That's what history sounds like."
Vladimir Pištalo's novel Millennium in Belgrade begins with Tito's death. While most Yugoslavians are taking their leave of Tito and his multi-ethnic state, a couple of pals in Belgrade listen to new wave music and laugh about their future.
Why does your novel start with the death of Tito?
And that moment was one of the most surrealistic moments that I actually witnessed in my life. Being on the streets of Belgrade, waiting for all of these people entering the National Assembly where his body was laid for people to visit it, and the absolute silence and the life of the city was postponed. And then the things really started deteriorating seriously.
Pištalo's novel describes how the country and lives of the people fell apart by the turn of the millennium. Since then, Pištalo has lived abroad for 2/3 of the year.
My father was the director of the university library in Sarajevo. That's the famous building where Franz Ferdinand came before his last ride. And then my father was in Sarajevo and I was in Belgrade. And since Belgrade was bombing Sarajevo, that means that I was bombing my father.
Asked how it could come to war in Yugoslavia, I say every single family had at least one aggressive fascist in the living room. And that was the television. From the screen, lunacy personified addressed the residents of Yugoslavia and called them to war.
Our reporter discovers what young authors are writing nowadays in the poetry anthology Ulaznica, which means admission ticket. In Zemun, on Belgrade's beach, he meets Milena Markovic. In addition to plays and screenplays, she's especially active in writing poetry.
My little one, my son whom I never bore. Don't be angry that I call you my son. You're not my son. Obey me. Leave this area. Leave the city. Leave the country. It's a bad place. There, grandfathers in tattered suits take their grandchildren for walks. There, fathers, children, and grandchildren live in the same coffins in large buildings. There, they wait constantly for their lives to begin. Believe me, I know that. I'm also waiting constantly for my life to begin.
You make a drum under your skin and then you write. Especially poetry is important in poetry, and then somebody read it and you help the people that way. You know, that is the story about poetry.
In her poems, screenplays, and dramatic works, Markovic always deals with lost souls. Her heroes are former soldiers and miners from eastern Serbia.
It is a time of change, so and tragedy is also very good for a time of change, because some old system of values is going and the other is not still there.
Matthias leaves Belgrade on the way to Pančevo. Since 1999, when NATO bombed the town's oil refinery, more and more people have been suffering from cancer. Here he meets Dragana Mladenovic. Her volume of poems, whose title means kinship, is a haunting Serbian-Bosnian family story.
Far away. From father a criminal, from mother a victim. Oh, how sick I am of the Balkans, the conflicts, the denial, the wars and peace treaties. I study the maps. How many kilometers to New York, Sumatra, China? Flee far away. However much further, it pursues me. The book focuses on two heroes. On the one hand, a young man who decides to denounce a war criminal who got two women pregnant. On the other, a young girl, Bilja, who can't stand living with the whole situation anymore. Wall. Don't ask what happened, what humiliation, what pain. Don't ask how I managed to get home and what I did then, what I thought about. Spoken to the wall, feverish, bleeding below, don't ask.
Back in Belgrade, Croatian Ivana Zimic-Podrožić is presenting the Serbian edition of her novel Hotel Zagorje, a coming-of-age story about a Bosnian child refugee. The fact that Croatians now read novels about this war in Serbia is more than just a signal that, despite open wounds, something has changed.
My generation will just now, they will just now talk about things that happen, and they have that need because everything that we saw is the way that brought us like we are today. So that's why we need to talk, discuss, and write about that.
Someday, the young generation will no longer ask whether they should leave their homeland.
Go or stay? If he wanted to go, Belgrade was a dreadful city full of barbarians who stuck bones through their noses. If he wanted to stay, America seemed to be a monster, a faceless country in which a third of the people were overweight and the politicians grinned like walruses. He said, I don't want to go there. There they sing other songs.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.